We want to be happy. We want to live and be creative. That's where our sense of purpose is drawn out of, our creativity. It's the best. And we want to have wisdom, and that's our intuition. It's what we feel as like a knowing of the heart, not of the head. And then we want to have a supreme love. We want to have a love that doesn't wax and wane when things come or when things go. So when an eclipse comes, it's kind of having a very interesting, fascinating effect on the polarities of life, and that because we ourselves are magnetic fields. The human body, the human mind, its chi, its prana, is a type of magnetism. Everything has an electromagnetic field. And so depending on the circumstances, the environment of this kind of life force environment of the human organism, the body, the mind, the emotions, the feelings, the aspirations, the sense of purpose, the despair, the depression, the anxiety, all of this is part of the life force environment, the chi, the prana. And that chi, life force, intelligence, I always think it's life force, it's love intelligence, because it's also the prana that's kind of generating the organism in the first place, life force. It's what is it that creates a baby in a mother's womb? I bet Elon Musk can't figure out how to do that. You see what I mean? That's something else. Maybe they can, who knows? But I don't really care. What I know is there's definitely a supreme intelligence underneath all of it, at the nucleus of all things. And people all around the world call it different names, refer to it in different ways, but nobody has a monopoly on it, what it's called, because what it actually is something totally mysterious, beyond the rational thought, beyond the experience of life's polarities. So when our endeavor in life is to also be more and more attuned with whatever that is, the kind of intelligence that gives us life, and to be about life, to be about creativity, to be about helping one another, to be about increasing the joy in our life. Because there's all sorts of narratives you could take on around the eclipse, and you can be realistic about any one you choose. You could say, for instance, in general right now, you could say, it's an excellent time. It's the most excellent time to be alive. It's a marvelous time to be alive. It's a wonderful time to be alive. And you could be right. And then you could say it's a horrible time to be alive. And you can make a case for it. There's climate disasters, da-da-da-da-da-da. But if you have any debating skills at all, you could make a good case for why it's a marvelous time to be alive. And you could make a good case for why it's the most horrible time to be alive. This is the narratives of the mind. And what yoga is interested in is paying attention to the narratives of the mind and working with the narratives of the mind, slowly but surely, working with the narratives of the mind so that we're producing narratives that aid in our health and our happiness. Because all of us have some narratives that are already doing that, aiding in our health and our happiness. We have narratives in our mind that have to do with how we love one another, and how actually we do love ourselves, and actually how we do love being alive. We all have that inside for sure. Maybe those have gotten way too quiet. And then we also have ones that are maybe causing us more dis-ease, lack of ease. And all of that's true. And so we may be thinking kind of lousy about ourselves, or we feel lousy about life. And that's very real. There's all sorts of reasons why it's totally reasonable to feel lousy about life at times. And sometimes those kind of lousy feelings can take a hold of us when they're too strong and there's too much of them all at once. And what can we do? We're just trying our best to live a happy life, but sometimes tragedy strikes, doesn't it? Or sometimes it's just kind of what I think of often as kind of lackluster living, where there's nothing particularly horrible that you can point to, and there's nothing particularly grand that you can point to, and somehow there's just a kind of dissatisfaction that's overcome the organism. So what Ayurveda and yoga is really designed to do is to give the organism inner satisfaction. And so you feed it. You feed it with the vitality of prana, of life force, and good nutrition. That's why we separate yoga and Ayurveda only really to learn about them, but they're the same thing. Jyotish, the science of the cosmic rhythm, the stars, the planets, the sky. Ayurveda, the understanding of the architecture of the human organism. And yoga, the way to work with this thing so that it is helping to be able to produce all the things that all of us naturally desire. We all naturally desire to live. We all naturally desire to know what is true and real. And we all naturally desire to have experience of love. That's how the yogis describe the three kind of innate desires of the human being. The desire that comes from prana, life force, the desire to live. And on the more subtle level, that's the desire to live forever, to be immortal, to never have to die. So all of us want somehow deep down to continue on. And then in the center you have, that comes from tejas, fire element. And that's the desire to know. That's the wish to know. We all want to know truth. We don't want to have to worry about what is real and what is not real, but that is a worry. And nowadays it's quite the worry on all the kind of, even the surface level of life, because with artificial intelligence now, nobody quite knows what is real in the online world. So that's going to be very interesting over the next several years to see how that affects the collective human psyche and each of us. Maybe it will help us have more discernment. Maybe who knows what's going to happen. But I believe in the wisdom of people. And so I think when we have a certain, or at least we endeavor to have a certain type of ownership of innate intelligence, innate love, and innate creativity. Those are those three desires: prana, tejas, and ojas. Ojas gives you the desire to experience love, because that's what ojas is love. At the most subtle level, they call it Satchit Ananda. And so it's bliss, because the types of love that come with romance is love, definitely, but it's love that waxes and wanes like the moon. Sometimes it gets eclipsed and all sorts of things. So really, that's a great type of love. It's one of the wonderful parts of being a human being. But it's not going to, romantic love isn't going to sustain us that far. Only so much. And so, therefore, what the yogi is endeavoring to do, and what Ayurveda does using herbs, foods, and etc., and what yoga practice does, and I always think Ayurveda gives you the art and the science of how to build the vital organism. And then yoga teaches you how to use the vitality of that organism to turn it into blissfulness. And the two of them together is really what makes it all work. So it's not just, Ayurveda is not just food and diet and herbs. Ayurveda literally means the wisdom of life. It describes the architecture of the physical and the mental and the subtle human. And it gives you a kind of ideas on how to be in harmony with one's own nature, and so that we can blossom, and so that we can shine. That's what happens, isn't it, when we really are having a more deep experience of what we are? And it's visceral, it's experiential, it's not philosophical. It doesn't come just from beautiful quotes. Beautiful quotes can give us clues. But at the end of the day, somehow we want that to come alive, to be our personal experience. We want to be happy. We want to live and be creative. That's where our sense of purpose is drawn out of, our creativity. It's the best. And we want to have wisdom, and that's our intuition. It's what we feel as like a knowing of the heart, not of the head. And then we want to have a supreme love. We want to have a love that doesn't wax and wane when things come or when things go. when things come together and then things fall apart. So in the realm of nature, that's how it's always happening. Things come together and things fall apart. So all the things that are operating within the realms of nature will follow that. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. But what makes life often very difficult is the mind grasping onto those either expansions or contractions of nature. Because what is our natural wish and natural desire is to be happy, is to experience love. So out of that natural wish, sometimes the mind will grasp onto things that are pleasurable and will push away things that are painful. What yoga practice is helping us do is to modify the tendency of the mind to do that. Because when the mind, to whatever extent my emotional mind grasps on to the pleasures when they come my way, to that extent, when those pains come, to that extent is the extent I will suffer because of it. So it's no big deal. It's not like some punishment. It's just physics. You see? It's just, yoga need not be religious. It takes all sorts of expressions and absolutely is applicable to any sort of religious or spiritual path. But in and of itself, it can simply be understand the physics of the mind, understand how to work with the life force of the organism, understand the architecture of the psyche, but not just in a philosophical way, in an experiential way as well. That's what we want to do tonight. And so when you have a moment like an eclipse time, you get this moment that sometimes it's like makes things kind of wonky, and like people generally are unsettled. But it's subtle enough that if you're not paying attention, you won't necessarily notice it. Because after all, we feel wonky not just when eclipses come. We feel weird and agitated and a little bit off all the time. Yeah, who knows what? I went home to kind of reset to come over here today, and I got super agitated when I went home. Do you know why? Because I left this grocery bag on the floor, and it had a bag of nutritional yeast in it. And I walked out, and I had taken a shower, and I walked out, and I was like, why does everything smell like nutritional yeast? My dog had gotten into that bag of nutritional yeast. I walked in, and the whole kitchen floor was covered in nutritional yeast. This is my eclipse experience. So I was agitated. So the whole beauty of what Ayurveda helps us do is to understand agitation as well. And to know, I know the vata comes up. And here's here's what we're going to be doing tonight. It's the most practical. It's using these exercises to take what we call in Ayurveda the vata energy. That's the energy of motion and mobility. It's what gives us kind of whirring energy. It's what makes us feel a little not clear and a little confused. And maybe sometimes we're listening. So because during eclipse, you have, what this is eclipse, it's a Rahu experience. It's the north node of the moon. And so whenever Rahu is involved, in this case with the sun, your sun is your sense of what you are, your sense of identity. And here comes Rahu like a blowing wind, a disembodied head that loves to party. Mythologically, this is Rahu. It doesn't mean it makes you want to party right now, but it's just that kind of energy. It's not a serene energy. It's an energy that's wanting to experience life, but it tends to create what we call vata. And if you can harness that Rahu energy, it can be very powerful and wonderful. It's innovative. It may help you evolve. So wherever like Rahu, that north node, is placed in someone's natal horoscope, that will show the area, domain of life where they'll tend to be a little bit more obsessive because Rahu is there. It's not a bad thing. That's because where there's so much of the karmas of our life, of this lifetime, are in that domain. So if you have Rahu in the 7th house, a house of relationships, then that will cause that person's psyche to have a tendency towards being very concerned about that area of life. They need to be concerned. They will be concerned. It's not even a choice. That's the karmas. The horoscope just shows the nature of the person's karmas. And so So there's a healthy expression of that, and there's an unhealthy expression of that. The reality is we're going to experience both. And when we're younger in particular, you might experience the more obsessive type of things. And as we hopefully develop a little bit more wisdom over life, even without knowing your charts or anything like that, it starts to refine. It starts to, oh, okay, why? Trial and error. We grasped onto that tightly. Anyone ever done that? You grasp onto something tightly and then you're not thinking of it that way. It's just, if this is what it must be, it feels so good. And then one day it's like, nope, nope. And you pull it. It doesn't go away so easy. You see what I mean? That's natural as human beings. And then we feel like so much pain and suffering because of it, though. But out of that whole process of all of this, what is actually happening? What actually is happening is hopefully deeper and deeper experiences of love. That's the beauty of the whole thing. But that is first by taking the kind of disposition that at the center of this thing is intelligence, love, wisdom, at the center of life. That's the tantric perspective, is that the whole creation is just something that has opened you up to a experience of love that doesn't wax and wane. And it will show you all the ways. Isn't that a beautiful way of seeing things? So it's not so much about this is how it is or this is how it isn't. It's about experiencing what life is all about, underneath all of the fluctuations of things. So, and that can only happen through our own personal experience and going through, because whatever the trials of our life are right now, you want to see where the direction to go is what's right in front of you. What's giving you the most problems and the most inspiration? There's some things in life that are giving us, but they need to be dealt with, because if they're not dealt with, they're going to get worse, aren't they? There's something to pay attention to. Okay, and then what's fueling creativity, inspiration? There's something also to pay attention to. Sometimes we have to search for that one a little harder because it's more subtle than the things that need our responsibility, things that are asking for our attention in a more like, I don't want to do it. Like the archetype is the IRS. Nobody wants to deal with it. But if you don't deal with it, what's going to happen? It's going to get worse. I've tried it. It gets worse and worse and worse. So that's a Saturn aspect of things. And Saturn is putting his glance right on top of this eclipse, so all of us are feeling it. It's happening in the part of the sky called Ashwini, which is very fast energy. And so anyhow, we're going to do these exercises. And the main point is this. When these moments are happening, Vata is high. Vata is life force prana in its more non-rhythmic, erratic form, expression. So in Ayurveda, it's considered king of all disease. There's 3 of them, right? Vata, Pitta, Kapha. It's the 5 elements. Air, ether, Vata, earth, water, Kapha, fire, Pitta. You don't need to remember any of this, just giving a little context for what we're doing tonight. So when your life force chi prana is moving in a rhythmic fashion and it's well concentrated in the central nervous system, it will flow in a rhythmic fashion and it will create vitality and it will give satisfaction to the body and the mind. So when that life force chi is non-rhythmic and it's more dilute in the periphery of the nervous system, say you're it has to be. Because to do all those responsibilities of our life, it's asking for our prana. So we have to call the the IRS. We have to take the kids to school. We have to do the dishes. So our life force, our prana goes where attention flows. Prana flows where the attention goes. And so your dishes need some prana. You know, the body, showering, all our different relationships need some prana. This is why we say Vata is the main thing. Because if we're not doing something on a regular basis to make sure the prana first and foremost is well centered in the nervous system, then life will overtake it and Vata will rule the day. And instead of being in more of a space of kind of prayerful joy, and I don't mean that in a religious sense, prayerful, I mean in a sort of praise, like you're grateful to be alive. It's every day is precious. That's what I mean by that. A praising type of, a gratitude type of joy that you live through, because that's the life force environment that's been cultivated. That'll naturally happen. Concentrate the life force in the central nervous system and then aspire to it. But what happens, because all these dimensions of our life, which you can see all through the zodiac, the different domains of the life, all the 12 houses, prana has to get to a little bit to all of them, where you have focal placements that needs even more of your prana in order to experience what the dharma of your life is, the real true purposefulness of your life. That feeling will bring you joy. That feeling will bring you a happiness that doesn't wax and wane as much, because there's something else going on that has more substance than all those other things. But all those other things will gain substance because of our connection to that. And furthermore, then the relationship will act as a catalyst to also draw out that more infinite style of love. The work life will become a catalyst that will also cause us to experience more deeply that supreme type of love and happiness. Something else that comes through it. You'll see that in a person, the glow of their eyes, the warmth of their smile, the vibe of their presence. It's non-intellectual. It's not punditry. Yeah, it's love. And punditry might help us. It's not anything about that, but that's not what this is. So that's what we're cultivating, and how we do that is simple. You all this vata energy, that's why eclipses are powerful, because it brings up all that energy. And so if you can actually harness that energy a little bit, then it becomes a powerful force that helps you to open up into that more transcendent space of mystics, far more easily than in times when there's not an eclipse, for instance. Make sense? So let's do this all together. I think we're going to have fun. If you're new to this, well, first of all, everybody, thank you for being here. If you're new to this, don't worry if there's some things you don't understand. No big deal. We have so many great courses, so much in our Life Force Academy membership. It'll teach you, if you resonate with it and it feels great to you and you want to keep going, we have lots of ways to do that are easy, accessible, affordable, and fun. Hey, thanks for watching on YouTube. Best easy way to stay in touch with us. Hit the subscribe button here. You'll see our videos when they come up. If you enjoyed this one, hit the like button. It'll help more people see it, help the channel grow. I appreciate you watching.